we will create a new report in Cognos Analytics. We will go to main menu, then to new, then we will select this option report. We will leave this blank template selected, and I will click on create. And now we have our blank report. First we will add some data source. I will click on this button, and then I will go to samples folder, then to data folder, and from here I will select Great Outdoors Data Module. I will click on open, and here we can see our data. Now the order of these tables and columns cannot be changed, but if we go here to toolbox pane, here at the top we have this pinned items list, and this is the list that we can customize. For example, I can remove this first item by right clicking and then selecting remove from pinned toolbox items. I can also remove this item, but I can in reverse add items to this list. I can go for example here, and I can add this item by selecting add to pinned toolbox items and this item. I can also change order of items in this list. For example, I can put this item at the top by selecting this option move up, or I can degrade this item by selecting move down. And we can reset this list to its default setting by right clicking and selecting restore default pinned items. Now we will add one list to our report. I can click here, and I will select this default name of a list and default query name. Okay. And now we will add some columns to our list. We will go here to sources, and we can add this column by dragging it. So when we see a blinking line, I will release my mouse. This is our first column. Then we can add this second column in the same way. So I will wait for blinking line to appear, and I will release my mouse. And we can do the same with this third column. But this third column we will place in between these two other columns. And if I don't like the order of my columns, I can change that order. If I select this header, I can then move this column to the left or to the right. I will move it to the right, so I will release my mouse, and this is a new order of my columns. If I select some column, and then if I click delete on my keyboard, I will delete this column. And if I select these three dots, I will actually select the whole list, and when I click on delete, I will delete the whole list. Besides adding list, we can also add table. If I click here, I can select that my table should have 3 columns, 3 rows. I will disable this option maximize width, and I will enable show borders. And now we can see our table. If I click on this plus sign, I can add a list inside of this cell. I will accept these default values, and now we have a list inside of our cells. And we can also drag another list to this cell. When I release, I will accept default values, and now we have 2 lists. And now the function of this table is actually to create a layout for our report. The final aim should be to create something like this, to arrange our elements inside of our report. Sometimes it is hard to select some of the elements inside of a complex layout. For example, if I select this data area, we will see that there is a hierarchy between elements in this layout. We can see that hierarchy if we click on this button, and we can see all of the elements of that hierarchy, and we can also see that here we have the same hierarchy. For example, if I click on list, I will select the whole list, not just the data area. So header will be selected also. We can then go to select a table cell. Now we have selected the whole cell. Then we can select table row, and then at the end we can select whole table. Now that the whole table is selected, I will click on delete on my keyboard to delete this table. We will now add another table. I will drag my table from here, and I will select again 3 columns and 3 rows. I will leave this option maximize width and I will enable show borders. Okay. Now we see our table, and now table is now always the same width as our report, because this table will occupy 100% of report's width. And then we want, for example, to delete this last row. For that, we can select one of the cells in that row, and when I click on delete on my keyboard, I will have to choose between deleting the entire column or entire row. I will select entire row, okay, and now our table only has 2 rows. If I select this cell here, I will be able to add rows in the middle of this table. For that, I have to go here to this action menu. I go to insert and I will select rows below. I will choose to add 2 rows. So when I click on OK, we will add these 2 rows in between. Now, but cells in these 2 rows doesn't have borders, so we will have to select all of these cells. I will hold my control key. I will select all of these cells, and then I will go in properties. I will use this border option. When I click on 3 dots, I can just click here and borders will be added. Then I can click on OK, and now we can see borders of all of the rows and cells. And then let's say that we want to merge 2 cells. For that, we have to select one cell. We hold Control button, and then we select another cell, and then we can click on this Merge Cells button. Now we have created one big cell, and in reverse we can also again select this cell, and this button is now Split Cell button. So if we click here, now we splitted that big cell into 2 original cells. I will click here on these 3 dots to select the whole table, and I will delete it. Tables are also important in order to explain default Cognos behavior. If we add one list to our report, we will accept these default values, and then if we add another list to our report here, when I click on OK, we will see that Cognos created a table that is in the background of these 2 lists. We can see here that this is actually a table cell, and we can select the whole table. So there is a table that held these 2 lists. We can turn on the borders. I will click here on 3 dots and then on this button, okay, and now we can see our table in the background. And I will delete now all of this. While my table is selected, I will click on delete on my keyboard, and then we will change this default behavior. We will go here to these 3 dots, then to options, then we will go to report tab, and there is an option enable guided report layout. If we disable this option, Cognos will no more create automatically those background tables. So I will disable this. I will click on OK, and what will now be default behavior? If we add a list, the first list will be added normally, but when we add another list, for example at this position, we will see this blinking black blinking line. So when I release my mouse, a new list will appear but below. So this is now default behavior. Every new element will be added below previous element. In this case, we should manually add a table to our report in order to control layout, because Cognos will not automatically create that table for us. I will now delete these 2 lists. I will click on delete and delete, and now I will show you these 2 buttons in a toolbar. This button on the right will allow us to more easily create a new table. We just have to choose one area, and that area will dictate how many rows and columns our table will have. I will delete this table, and then I will show you that second button. If we click here, we will be provided with a menu of some templates. I will choose this template here, and now our report is divided into sections. And if we select all of these cells, and if we add borders, then we will see that this template is made by one table that Cognos created for us. We will now select the whole table here, and we will notice that this table occupies 100% of width and 100% of height of our report. That setting is controlled by this property here. If we click here on these three dots, then we will get this menu, and here we can change those settings to 50% and 50%. And when I click on OK, now our table will occupy only 1/4 of report area. I will now delete this table. Delete. Now I will show you a block element. I will add this block element to our report, and this block element is something similar to one cell of a table. We can add something inside of our block element. For example, I can add this text item here. I can type something inside of this text item, okay? And we can now select our block element. We can go here, select block, in order to enable borders. We'll again click here to add borders, and we can now see block around our text item. We can use this block to center our text item. If I click here, I can then click on center, and now we can see the text is in the center of this block element. So block element is mostly used to control some element that is inside of it, or it is used to create some empty space inside of our report. And this block now looks like a caption for our report, but the best place for a caption is inside of a header. We click here on these three dots. We can go to this menu, we can create a header, we can create a footer, or we can click here and then we can enable both header and footer. Then we can click on OK. And now we can move this block item inside of our header. We just drag it like this. When we see this blinking line, we can release our mouse, and now we have a proper caption for our report, or we can move it inside of our footer if we want to. And this is how we can move elements inside of our report to a place where we want them to be.